Hey everybody, welcome to the out of class time. So I'm just going to show you again how to do some of the things that I showed you in class, or maybe if you weren't in class, then it'll be new for you. But what we were looking at was the PowerPoint that had a picture of a bunch of different M&Ms in our sample, and we wanted to add up the different M&Ms so we would know sort of what was going on in the population based on just the ones that spilled out of the bag there. So we counted visually that there were 5 reds and 7 oranges and 8 yellows, 3 greens, etc. But then we actually had some differences of opinion in the class when we were trying to figure out how many there were total. And so it was easy enough to count up the different colors individually, but then sort of lost track when we were trying to count them all up. So we could just type all of those different numbers into our calculator. But an even faster way to do it is to type here where you want the answer to be. And I have the word total here, so equals, the symbol equals, and then an open parentheses, and then the word SUM equals sum. So we want to sum up all of the numbers that are between. So we have an open parentheses, because we're going to put the numbers that we want to count in there. And I could just type them, but what I'm going to do instead is select the top number here, 5, and then I'm going to drag down, and so I have all of the numbers I want to add up selected. And I'm going to close the parentheses, and you can see that it says C2 to C7. So you can see that this is column C. In column C, row 2 is this number here, 5. It's how many reds we had. And then column C, row 7, which is the other number here, is the last one that we were interested in. That was how many browns we had. So what this is going to do is count up all of the numbers that are in this list. So when I click enter, that's indeed what happens. We get 34. So that was a way that we checked our work today. And so I could also figure out the percentage of each of these colors by typing it into my calculator. I could type, equals 5 divided by 34, and I can get an answer there. And okay, so it's rounded up to 15% maybe. And so there were 15 red in the bag. But I'm actually, as you know, lazier than that. I don't want to have to do that for every single one. So what I can do instead is I just did it once, where you can see I clicked on the number 5 like I did before, and it said again. So what you're talking about there is whatever value is found in C2. So I clicked on it and it knows I'm talking about C2, and then I say divide by 34 because that's how many we had total. And that's all I have to do for typing in numbers, because now I can just select the edge of this box and drag it down, and woohoo, it fills all of that in for me, so I don't have to do nearly as much typing. So the orange, there were 7 out of 34, which is 20%, or might round up to 21. And so you can see here that when you click on it, you can see what the actual formula is, just in case anything goes wrong. You can see, okay, so what does the computer think it's trying to do here? And what it's trying to do, and I should probably zoom in on this stuff a little bit more for the video. What it's trying to do here is say, okay, it's column C, row 3, which is number 7, and dividing it by 34. So the reason that I didn't click on the 34 here is that that would sort of keep going down too. So maybe I'll just show you what that looks like. So one thing you might be tempted to do is I don't want to type 34 even one more time. So what I might try doing is, and this is wrong, equals 5 divided by the total here. So C2 divided by C8, and you click equal, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that worked. That's the same number as before. So I'm just going to drag that down then. And oops, you can't do it, because below this 34, it was trying to look down at the next one in the same way that over here it said, okay, the next one is C3. So if I want to see what's going on there, I can click on the thing that I made the mistake about, and I see it's C3, okay, that's what I want, divided by C9. Oh, okay, so it's trying to read C9 there, and there's nothing there. So that's why it didn't work. So sometimes if you're running into problems, you can just look and see what's going on with what's happening in the formula bar there. So, okay, I've got my relative frequency. And what I showed you in class is that you can make 2 different graphs using a histogram, using either the frequency or the relative frequency. And you can see that the relative frequency total here is 1 or 100%, which means we've counted all of them there. So the 34 divided by 34 is 1, because if it's all of them, we've reached 100%. So what I'm going to do is I want to select my data, go right here like this. Oops, I'm going to say insert. I'm going to insert a column or a bar chart. Okay. And what I'm going to want to do is actually add some data. That didn't stay. So select this and then say insert this. Okay, now it worked. So I just unselected, which was my mistake. So select the stuff you want. So it's got the colors and it's got the frequency. And if you want to check to see what's going on, you can click here on the chart filters and see what it's actually measuring. So it actually is trying to fill in the tally as well, and you can see that over here it has some places that it would put in for. It would do those in blue if I had actually had any numbers there. So I don't actually need that, so I can deselect it. I do want all of my categories, I think, but then on the other hand, maybe we don't need the total because that's not giving us extra information, so maybe I'll deselect the total. And what should happen will be that when I apply it, that'll fix it. And so you can see that when you do that, it changes sort of how much information is visible. So you might want the count to sort of be close enough that you can see more easily the differences between the different colors. So, okay, great. I can see, and if I don't feel like looking at my chart over here, I can look at my graph and say, okay, the red ones, goes up all the way to 5. There are 5 red ones. Oranges goes up to 7. There are 7 orange ones. And in class, I also just, for fun, wanted to change the colors to make them match. So you can do that by right-clicking, and then if you go to the fill function, I can, say that's the bar that I want to have red, and that's the one that I want to have yellow, and you could go through and do those if you wanted to, just to make it more beautiful. So the other thing I want to do then is show you the difference between the frequency histogram and the relative frequency histogram, because those numbers look really different, don't they? There's the 5 to the 0.14, so you might think, okay, that chart's going to look like a totally different chart. But if I select all this stuff and I say I want to insert, I want to do a chart again, I want to do these columns, and I'll pull it over here. So what it's trying to do right now is do the tally column and the frequency column and the relative frequency column. And you can't even see the relative frequency at all because those numbers are so small compared to the total, so it's trying to graph both 5 and 0.14 at the same time. So if we zoom way, way in, it might show you that you can start to see some of those bars, but it's weird to have them on the same chart because they're at such different scales. So what I'm going to do is click here again on my chart filter, which is like the little funnel, which I'm sure you have no familiarity with at all from parties. And so I don't want to do the tally. I don't want to do the frequency. I just want to have the relative frequency. And I also am going to get rid of the total again because, like we said before, that's sort of redundant information. So when I apply this, let's look what happens. Okay, so now it's just showing the relative frequency and the different colors. And you can see that these graphs have exactly the same shape. And I can do exactly the same thing with it too. So if I want to really show you exactly how much it matches, I can say oh yeah, I can fill that in with red, same as I did before. And the red bar here is exactly the same height as it is here. It's just that the measurement in this y-axis is different because here it's doing the count, the frequency, and here it's doing the relative frequency. But this is saying 5 out of 34, basically. The column, the numbers here don't go all the way up to 34, but that's what this is saying. If we counted all of these up, the red ones make up 5. And here, it just makes it a little bit easy to understand what those proportions are. So because we did the 3 divided, or the 5, it was 5 divided by 34 to get this number, that's why we can say, oh, okay, I see, it's sort of right at 15%. And that 15% number might be a little bit more helpful when we're trying to think about, okay, so how does my sample relate to what might actually be going on in the population? And if this was all of the information that I had, and this is all of the statistics knowledge that I had, which is probably, where some of you are, you might say a reasonable guess would be that if I had a big bag of M&Ms, maybe about 15% of that bag would actually be M&Ms. And if I was feeling really advanced, I could say, okay, but I know that there's 500 M&Ms in there, so how many red ones are in there? And I could easily do that math if those are skills that I had. So I could say, I could find the 15% of the 500 in the bag and move on like that. So the final thing I'm going to show you that you'll see perhaps in chapter 2.1 is this idea of cumulative frequency. So that's going to look a little bit different, and I'll show you how to find those numbers. So what we're doing here is we're adding them up in such a way that it will not forget about what we counted last time. So here I'm going to say, I'm just going to type the number 5 because so far we've counted 5. We only counted the red ones, so 5. I'll just type that in. And here I'm going to say equals this number 5 that I just put in. So that's E2 because it's in column E, row 2. And then I'm going to add column C, row 3, because that's how many orange ones we have. And so when I click equal there, you'll see it comes to 12, which is, and let me just show you what it looks like, and I should maybe zoom in a little bit on that. Okay, so it's column E and 2 for 5, and column C, row 3 for the 7, and so it's just adding those two values up. Now what I'm going to do here is say equals, and I'll do it the same way. So the 12 that was above plus, now I'm adding the 8 more from the yellows. So the C4 right there, and I'll click equal. Okay, so this number should be the total that we had counted so far. So the red and the orange is we had 12 total, and then we add another 8 to it by adding that yellow right there, and we get 20. Now this is the fun bit. This is the part where we get to feel like we're saving ourselves some labor. I select both the 12 and the 20 so that the program can understand that that's the pattern I'm trying to follow, not just type 5 like I did in the first one. So for both 12 and for 20, we took the number above and then we added a particular value from the C column. So that's what it's going to try to replicate when I select those two and then drag it down. And you can see that it keeps on adding. So it said 20 plus 3 because 3 is in the C5 column, so it's adding the greens. And here it's saying, okay, 23 plus another 3 because that's the one in the blue row, so that's C6, and you can see it in the formula there as well. And then finally, if we add up the browns and add to that as well, we see that it's 34, which is a great way to check that our numbers are all lined up, because that should also be what the total is when you add those all up. So it's a different way of sort of getting this total, but what's nice about this is that we can see, okay, if I get all of the red ones, how many do I have? And then I add the orange, and then I add the yellow. And so something you might want to actually be looking at in real life using a data like that, or a description of data like that, might be things like, at different months, how much money have we earned? Because we want to know, like at the end of the year, how much money did we earn total? We don't want to know just month by month. We want to be able to see how it's all adding up. So we can also make a chart for that. And there's different styles of charts that can do it. But let's again, take our whole thing, and we're going to say insert a bar chart. And so it's again trying to do a bunch of stuff at once. And you can see that the shapes are similar, but in this case we really can't tell very easily what's going on. So I'm going to change what we're talking about, going to the chart filters. I'm going to say we're not going to do tally, we're not going to do frequency, we're not even going to do relative frequency. I'm only interested in the cumulative information. And the total I'm not going to do because that's definitely redundant this time. So I say apply, and now I've got my cumulative graph. So I can maybe pull this down, maybe over here so we can see. And we can see here that with each step up, it is adding another. And so by the time we get to the end, the brown ones, it's saying basically the number here is the same as our sample size. So it should be right there at the 34 mark. So that's 30, that's 35, so it's right below that. And again, if I want, I can change the colors of each one to sort of see how it is. But this one, remember, this column is not representing just how many green there are, but representing how many green, yellow, orange, and red they are. It's just not counting the blue and the brown yet. So I hope that this helps understand both what's going on and also how to save yourself some time in the future when you're trying to make these graphs. So I want to say something like they would say on YouTube, like subscribe and like, but this is just private for you. So I don't know, should I start a YouTube channel? All right, I'll talk to you guys later.